Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It's our chess show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and I would like to introduce our great contributor, Professor Ken Regan. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you very much. It's a rather a quiet time here.
Uh, yes, we are in the midst of um, chess world is waiting for big things happen soon. Uh, I'm talking about the all kind of rapid and blitz championships. I'm talking
Right.
about
I know.
potentially world championship for a crown between. So who is there now? Is it Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren? Mm, so far, I never heard lately anything about the match. Is it happening or not? If it's happening, when, where, what's the venue? Nothing of that kind. What about you, Ken? Do you have any
I have
ideas?
not. Yeah, I have not had my ear to the ground. Um, so about that. Um,
Hmm.
so, um, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
Okay. So we have to really go on with whatever we have. You've mentioned that you visited Marshall's Chess Club
That's
recently.
right. I took part in an online event
Okay.
with the presidents of the U.S. and Canadian Chess Federation, Randy Bauer and Vlad Drkulec. Um, um, and it was good. I mean, I gave the slides for my presentation are actually online,
Hmm.
so they're on my talks page, Marshall in the name. Um,
Hmm. Can we see it here? Is
yeah,
it?
I can show it.
Okay, great.
So
That
maybe I'll
would
do
be
that. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay,
okay.
so let's see. So present, share screen. Um, yeah, so I'll show you how to find things on my website. Um,
Aha.
so let's see. So we're just Google's me. I joked on Facebook that my business card is Google Me, but it's Regan Buffalo gets you there and talks. Now these are chock a block. I've not organized things at all, but they
Hmm.
have all the presentations I've given, including presentations for FIDE. So now you're seeing Marshall Chess Club.
Aha. Okay.
Yes.
Makes
So,
sense.
right. So in this, I have both as a NP means no pauses, WP means with pauses.
Oh, um,
So but I'll show the no pause version. So
okay.
just then you get to see every slide. And I had only 6 slides. The format was each of us had 10 minutes. We took more like 12 each, but as I packed what I had to say into 12 minutes. And then there was 45 minutes of question and answering and some final statements.
Hmm.
So I
Hi,
talked
Jim.
first. So as said, and I note acknowledgement to co-authors in the UB Center for Computational Research. So in six slides, I talked about how my system is 2 stages. Raw outlier index, which just makes a simple box score. It does not try to gauge how difficult the games are. And it uses a common scale, 0 to 100, where 50 is the expectation given one's rating, and 5 is the standard deviation. So, regardless of the rating of the player, the scores are interpreted the same way. Okay, and the idea is somewhat similar to when you do a blood panel work. You'll get a list of all your scores, bilirubin, cholesterol, blah blah blah, and it'll show what's the normal range and then your score and see if it's in that normal range. So it's just like that, except that the medical scores you get, they give the absolute levels. So there are all these numbers that are hard to interpret. Whereas what I do is I put everything on a common scale. The normal range is always 40 to 60. 50 is always the expectation for the average person or average performance by a player of your rating. And then your actual number is on that scale. And then the question is, how far outside the normal range are you? If it's 65, if you're a little above the normal range, the doctor will say, I'm not so concerned. But if you're at 70, then yes, and maybe another checkup or drugs to lower your cholesterol or something like that. And 75, maybe you should go to the hospital. So I showed an example of this score. So this is from the Havana Capablanca Memorial, a tournament that's whispered about a lot in terms of both the chess.com report draws attention to it, but there's absolutely nothing here. So this is data taken with Stockfish 15, and it's the latest Stockfish, and Niemann's score is right smack in the middle of the normal range. The tournament averages, if anything, a little bit under the normal range. And Niemann's score, of course, 7.5 out of 9 was really crackerjack. But the main reason for that, looking at this data, is that the average cent-to-pawn loss by Niemann's opponent was higher than the opponents of any other player. Only Luis Ernesto Quesada Perez was close in the amounts of gifts he received. So that's the best explanation. And it does turn out that Niemann's opponents tend to play worse than their ratings against him. Whereas I did now a whole deep dive study of Niemann's career, and it's dead on the expectation. It's dead on if you allow for the lag of his rating in 2020. And even if you don't correct for it, it's really close. So that's the, and I made the point that you can use the screening scores already to turn aside, unfounded complaints or answer questions. It also gives you a global health picture of your tournament. And I can do this real fast. This can be, within an hour of a game finishing. And this is completely data driven. And in fact, the coefficients for it are completely trained on the in-person Rapid and Blitz events in 2019, mainly the World Rapid and Blitz. Incidentally, the World Rapid and Blitz in 2021 was, to me, visibly impacted by COVID. It's not just that Nakamura had to withdraw from the last day because of COVID. There were other players affected, and I don't know how many, but I could tell that in my data. So I did not update my formula for the 2021 Rapid and Blitz. The corollary of this, and the fact that my formulas work so well, the in-person events, like the Havana Kappa Mem, those are trained entirely on the Olympiads, the in-person Olympiads from 2010 to 2018. But the fact that my formulas work so well for online Rapid and Blitz, especially on the middle 3 sigma range where I don't think there's cheating, is a testament to the quality of online play being exactly the same as over the board. Whether we have an electronic board or a physical one does not seem to make a difference. Then I went into the full test model and how it's really a garden variety predictive analytic model of the kind used by economists to measure consumer behavior in terms of utility, or insurance companies to measure risk. And I'm sure you use predictive analytic models in finance all the time. Has 3 main player parameters. And the third one, H, has been the hardest to tame. But I think it captures a tendency that is the subject of this interesting book titled Nudge, where the basic thesis of this book is that we tend to make our decisions based on an impetus from new information more than we do about reviewing all the information we have to hand. In other words, we tend to get nudged into doing things. So I think I'm measuring exactly that tendency at chess. So then 3rd of 6 slides was I talked about how I operate my model. I can infer the parameters from a player's rating, or I can profile players more individually. I don't have enough data to make a profile with tight error bars, so I don't use those in my initial cheating reports. but it can be used for defense. If a player says, well, I'm really more like Karpov, or I'm more like Tal than the average player, then I can do a different trade-off of my parameters. So sensitivity really does correspond to strategic ability, and C, consistency is the ability to survive tactical minefields. It mainly affects the probability of making a blunder. And after that, the statistical analysis itself, I deliberately made easy, even at a small cost and power. I was intending to use a distributional distance measure, not fidelity per se, but fidelity, the quantum version of fidelity, is exactly the statistic used by Google in their quantum supremacy experiment, where I've written an article analogizing that to my chess testing. But anyway, I deliberately chose to make the statistical application itself very simple. And I also set the statistics based on millions of randomized trials involving Frankenstein players. And this is something I said that was completely new. So what do I mean by a Frankenstein player? I have 1,000 games in my trading set by people all rated within 10 points of 25-25. That's one of my mileposts. So I will simulate a 9-game tournament by taking 9 different games at random and white or black in those games at random. And so I consider 9 different players to be one player. And so that's my Frankenstein player. That leaves open the question, however, though, of whether there is important covariance that I'm missing from compared to cases where it's all the same player. Well, for the first time, I have done somebody's entire published chess career, and it's not my own. I've never had time to type in my own games. I did Niemann, going all the way back to 2013. And the point is that it conforms with my estimates quite closely. So the covariance factor in different games, and covariance in the same game, absolutely. That's what I'm talking about here. Decisions on consecutive chess moves in the same game are not independent. But the covariance of it being the same player, that is non-existent in the case of Niemann. So unless you think Niemann is Frankenstein, it puts aside the concern over my Frankenstein player step. So, and then here's something, though, that I could talk with you about. So I've displayed again for the first time, because I've not made a published paper about this, the internal evidence that the projections in my model, so a predictive analytical model puts probabilities on events associated to risk or reward quantities. So as an assurance company, will want to gauge the likelihood of certain damage that's being insured against, auto insurance especially. How likely are people to have certain kinds of accidents? So I want my probabilities to be within 4%. So this is evidence that they're within about 4% on a relative error model. This is multiplying the projected probability. So in other words, if my model says that a blunder is only 5% likely, collectively overall blunders, say moves with one or more pawn loss, then my projections are apparently accurate within 4% of 5%. So 2/10 of 1% or 2/100 of 1%. Let's see, 4% of 5% must be 2/10 of 1%. So that's pretty good. That's and the meaning of this, it may seem weird. What does it mean to say that probability projections are accurate? Is that as long as I have 5% overhead, nobody who's omniscient could arbitrage my model if we did real-time betting on chess moves, like your democratic chess, but with a bookkeeper system instead of your ingenious shared payout system. And the 4% is pretty consistent in my model. These curves do say, and let me make this larger. These curves do say that my model begins to become less accurate. It gets out of the 4% range. Here's the 4% range you're seeing here. Once the rating gets over 2,500, especially once it gets over 2,600. Although this is still tolerable, it only goes up to 8% relative error. Means my analysis isn't quite deep enough for these players, although it really is. This is 8% relative error is not bad either. And the results are pretty consistent in my model built with 3 different chess engines. But Stockfish 11, weirdly, after being in the 4% range overall ratings, starts thinking my model becomes infinitely accurate over 2,600. Well, actually, something just goes weird in the measurement tool that I'm using, which is something called the Breyer prediction score. So I've patched this by hand. I have not yet built my model for Stockfish 15 because the Niemann case has diverted me from doing that. It'll be a week plus process. But then I'll see if my initial foray gives this same issue. Another thing holding me back is that Stockfish 15, the development versions a month ago, completely changed their evaluation function back to being more normal. Then I went through this slide. I won't go through this with you. This is rather tedious, although it was the most important thing for discussion with the U.S. and Canadian chess federations and FIDE in general. How are scores interpreted? The upshot was that a 4.0 is to be interpreted far more gravely for online chess because the prior likelihood of cheating online is higher. Whereas for over-the-board chess, it means nothing unless there's supplementary evidence. And then the last slide I showed was about, this is Niemann's famous rating graph. And I channeled the famous Magritte, this is not a point. So this is his famous, painting, the treachery of images. Now, is that you? Is that the ringing, or is it me?
It's me.
Okay.
So
anyway,
my wife.
so the fun point of this is that the French word for cheating in chess is triche, tricherie. It's related to our word treachery. So I'm saying, is this image of tricherie? And then in German, Grafeines niemand means never man. And I'm saying this is not a plateau. So I actually took this from the chess.com report where they allege 2 plateaus in Niemann's career. But this one's an illusion because for the second half of the plateau, his rating was artificially low because it wasn't being updated during the pandemic. And my formula for adjusting pandemic lag would have given him this lower orange line. However, what I have since measured is that this 2019, late 2018, 2019, actually from here in 2019, is not a plateau either. Niemann really played 2,500 level chess throughout 2019 using my intrinsic performance rating. So in reality, his line should start from here, and then his rise is less unusual. So anyway, so I regard this as an illusion. This, on the other hand, really is a plateau, but I myself had a 3-year plateau between ages 13 and 16, exactly the same age range for Niemann. So I can't set much store by that either. So that's what I talked about. And at the very end, I made a point about cognitive illusions and the lack of awareness of things like selection bias. So for instance, one can do a comparison of my own Niemann data is posted here. There's one data point I have to update, and that has to do with the Sunway Sitkus event. I had only 7 games. I was missing his last 3 games. He lost 2 and won 1, but the last 3 games actually with Stockfish 11 up this score to 64.9. So it leapfrogs over the 62. It still becomes one of only 2 data points above the 60 range. And for this many tournaments, that's not too unusual. And if you take that as 64.9, then in fact my table and my augmented table going back further becomes actually very much like the table in the Hans Niemann report, which I have here. So on page 52 of chess.com's report, there is a table of their strength scores. Oops, 51, 52, here it is. Okay, so this is the table of chess.com's strength scores. 14.99 for the Philly International. They actually don't get such a high score for the Sunway Sitkus. In fact, where is it? And I get lower scores with different engines. Here it is. So the 2020 Sunway Sitkus, let's see, can I highlight it? Yeah, there it is. So they actually get a much lower strength score than I do. And I don't get such a high strength ROI score for the Philadelphia International. Now, their score is not indexed, okay? Their actual strength score is on a 0 to 150 scale that varies by the rating of the player. But they can set the expectation versus the rating of the player, so the difference is what they call their overperformance. They don't state a standard deviation either, but if the standard deviation is 5, then this is very much like what you get from my ROI chart if you subtract off the 50. So in other words, my score for Sunway Sitkus is 64.9, really, when I include the missing games, which I just realized. So that's 3 standard deviations above, and this is 15 above. It's the same thing. And the other scores pretty much fall into the same order, in particular from 5 to -5, centered on 0. This is about 2/3 of, my mouse slipped. And actually, no, it's going on, but it's about 2/3 of their table. It's a little less than 2/3 of their table. So in fact, maybe their effective sigma is less. But the point is, this is a balanced spread. It has, negative values. It has downs. It has ups. The 0.10 is about the midway of the table. So to me, this kind of thing looks completely normal. And they, however, say, well, some of these higher scores should be referred for fair play review. And I think that shows a lack of understanding of selection bias and normal spread. So again, just relating to our actions, I posted something similar. Oops, and I just accidentally closed it. Let's do it. Okay. I posted something similar, including the ROI, the online events, since 2020. I get a bigger table of similar size, and here's the spread of ROI figures. The median is right 50.6. It's right in the center of the table. But they go as high as 62.3 and 64.9 now when I fix the Sitkus data point. And to me, this is normal. It's a normal spread. It's cherry picking to draw attention to the upper things on the spread. So anyway, I talked about that kind of cognitive mistake that people make. Oh, Jim is here. James is here. Good. Okay. I didn't see you come in. I would have stopped sitting on. Okay.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
You had a fantastic lecture for us, and I'm pretty sure it will be repeated more than once for our audience because it's absolutely fantastic revelations what you did. I have just one question. When you mentioned the predictions of moves on our democratic chess model, so according to what I understand, you have potentially a mechanism for predicting the moves.
Yes, indeed, I used it when we played democratic chess.
And
Well,
how did it
I didn't have time to run the full deep dive analysis, but I have a quick approximation, and I looked at moves at different depths and judged. Yeah, I ran Stockfish in 5 PV mode while playing democratic chess, and sort of just estimated the scores. And if I felt I could get good leverage on an unusual move, I bet on it.
Okay, that's great to know, and I'm pretty sure in the future you will be able to demonstrate the advantages of your system. And of course, there are also a mechanism of putting different bets, such as 5 crowns, 25, and 100. So that also would have to be figured in the equation because it's happened already before in the contest when players who sometimes closer to the end of the contest would put 5 crowns on somewhat not obvious, let's put it this way, move, and they would win, grab all the pool, and would become a winner of the contest. That's happened to me once, but to others as well. So that obviously will have to be figured. However, I really appreciate your great knowledge, experience, and willingness to share it with us.
Yeah.
And have a great week, and looking forward to see you next week again.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yep. Okay. Yep. Bye-bye. Okay. Oops. I guess we're off. Jim didn't get to say anything. Oh well.
That's all right. One comment was it's Frankenstein's monster, not Frankenstein.
Well, oh, that's true, but I think that's no, yeah, but oh, you're right. Frankenstein is the person. You're right. Yes, Frankenstein's monster. Yes. That is a good point. Yes, okay.
But that's a trivial point in all.
I'm using it as an adjective, not as a noun.
Yeah, I think everyone follows.
Yeah,
Not
I think Demon would rather be
thinking like
Frankenstein
me.
than the monster. So
Yeah.
okay.
And the other thing is you can cherry pick anyone's games, like anyone's tournament results. I've far exceeded expectation in multiple tournaments, and I've underperformed in multiple tournaments. So if you only look at my overperformance, that's highly questionable. No, that's unpredictable. I'm going to outperform myself and underperform myself over the course of a career.
Right, and the chess rating system was designed to take that into account. It has a designed standard deviation of 200 ELO points, meaning the normal range is to overperform or underperform by as much as 400 ELO.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we could all cherry pick our own tournaments and say, this is how good I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the analysis is fascinating, and you've given a chance to present that to the federations in question. Has there been any court officials that you've been able to present to, or?
That stage is not surfaced yet.
Yes. Okay.
Thankfully, I had a grading marathon and gave an exam 2 days ago, so I had to catch up with that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Work keeps interfering with chess. I always said that. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that the Tata Steel tournaments in India were just completing, and I noticed there was a 2,650 player in a tournament where 8 players were rated over 2,700, and I think he was the tournament winner.
Ooh,
so,
okay.
Who knows? On any given tournament, somebody can outperform expectations.
That's right. Yeah, I have. I didn't notice that on Chess24. So let's see. Yeah, so I will. Not the. Was it just Rapid? No, Blitz is happening now. Oh, the Rapid just finished.
Just
Okay.
finished. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, the Rapid. Yes, I was looking at that. There isn't a slow chess tournament there. No. Okay.
Can I have just one more question? Coming back to the prediction of moves, which obviously subject that I do care a lot about. Provided that the players of the game, which you are participating as a move predictor, let's see if they are not 2,700 plus players, but rather say 2,500 plus players. Would that be more easier for you to predict the moves or
Well,
more?
according to the charts I showed, 2,500 is the upper part of the range where the 4% accuracy is pretty consistent. 4% relative accuracy. So yes, it would be a little bit easier for me. Yeah. And I could maybe make it work for 2,700 if I ran to a higher depth, although there's a trade-off. The higher depth I go, the weaker the heave, the H phenomenon is. And that's really where I get my predictive advantage.
Mhm.
And there's a graphic I've shown before too, where if I try to up the predictive component of my model, it becomes less stable.
And
So
also, you
that
don't get
trade-off
time
is
to go into depth because their games they play are quite quick. So you're not allowed to take the time to go into great depth.
That is also possible. It is possible that I would become more. In fact, that's it. For fast chess by 2,700, I adjust their rating down. 240 for game 25 rapid, 575 for game 3+2 blitz.
Yeah.
So that again will put things in my sweet spot.
Fascinating. Really.
The last thing I wanted to bring up, Sasha, and you'll remember this very well, is the great cheating scandal that comes to mind was the candidates match in 1962 when Fischer said the Russians were collaborating. And in those days, you had to play 4 games against each player, so a total of 28 games.
Mhm.
And so the fact that there were 8 Russians in that candidates match.
No, I
Five.
wouldn't say 5.
5 Russians.
5 out of 8. 5 out of 8.
5 out of 8. Okay, I just read it. Maybe I read it wrong. In any case, Petrosian, Geller, and Keres finished the top 3. Fischer finished 4th, and he openly complained about them collaborating in Russian during the games. And he said when he complained about it, they just laughed at him. And so this is the kind of thing where collusion and between players could be done in something as serious as a candidates match. And so this accusations of cheating have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Even at the highest levels of chess. And now the candidates matches are a thing of the past. And there are more controls, and you don't have anybody playing 28 rounds candidate matches anymore, for one thing, nor 4 games against each player anymore. But with the onset of the Rapid, maybe that's coming back into play. Like I think Tata Steel Rapid, multiple games versus the same opponent, playing everybody. So, this is another type of thing where, especially if you have a concentration from one country versus, sprinkling of other players from other countries, it could be another source for internet rumors.
Yeah.
That may have merit or not. And this is why we need the objective data that you're presenting.
Jim,
I have the quality of the whole Curacao tournament being only 25-40. So, and the Hague was even lower.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
yeah.
well, it's a different type of cheating than what Ken discussed with us, because in Ken's discussion, the paramount question is the computer cheating. In other words, machine is helping players to select the move. Now, in that cheating, what Fischer alleges, it's completely different type of cheating. There is an agreement, maybe.
Well, that was the other myth, I guess. That was the other component.
It's absolutely a different kind of. Now, if Fischer at that time would be just as strong as Russians, or even stronger, That type of agreements would not help Russians at all,
Mhm.
because by making draws, they were losing half a point each time that such a draw would be agreed. And if Fischer would be as a tank, bombasting, which he did a decade later in 71, 72, he would destroy all this field, and he would be still first, and there would be probably a 3-point difference between what he scored.
Well, there were two accusations of cheating. One was the collaboration, and the other over the board while they were playing, and the other was the agreement of draws between the Soviet players at the time. And that in a 28 game match, that's very grueling. You know, a 28 game tournament. So they were resting. Basically, these were rest days.
Yes,
That's
I think
absolutely
is the
correct.
main point. So as I said, it doesn't show up so high in my quality meter. So I don't know. I should probably redo my work on that. I do have to leave.
We all have to leave. Thank you so much again. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
next week.
Okay, and this finished the recording? Good. Okay.
Yes, let's finish the
Okay.